The hall was dark when Miss Imogen Bassett arrived. Not the ordinary dark of a house after supper, when lamps are turned low and fires banked, and the household settles into the particular quiet of evening. This was a different kind of dark. 3 windows faced the drive, and none of them showed light. The carriage that had brought her from Kingston was already retreating down the lane, the driver having expressed a strong preference for returning before the weather turned, which left her standing on the stone step of Fairfax Hall in the last grey hour of a November afternoon, her travel bag at her feet, her gloved fist raised to knock on a door that might, for all she knew, have no one left behind it. She knocked. She waited. She knocked again. "Dear friends, I want you to hold that picture for a moment." A young woman, 27 years old, daughter of a country physician, standing alone at the door of one of the largest private estates in the Ottawa Valley, in weather that promised snow before midnight, having been told by 3 separate people on 3 different occasions that what she was about to attempt was not possible, that it had been tried, that a woman of her particular station had no business presenting herself at Fairfax Hall at all, let alone believing she could succeed where 4 capable men had failed. I want you to hold that picture, because this story begins with her standing there, and the way it ends has everything to do with the fact that she did not turn around and walk back down the lane. Now let me tell you about Lord Fairfax. Lord Declan Fairfax, 5th Viscount Fairfax, had not left the east wing of his house in 11 weeks. This was a fact known to Mrs. Greer, his housekeeper, who had kept the hall running on a skeleton staff and a skeleton budget, and sheer stubborn loyalty for 3 years. It was known to Mr. Fletcher, his solicitor in Ottawa, who had been corresponding by letter for those same 3 years, and had now, with some desperation, sent a woman where 4 men had gone and returned empty-handed. And it was not precisely known to Miss Bassett, who had been told only that Lord Fairfax required a person of organizational competence to attend certain estate documents before the 15th of the month, at which time a court hearing in Ottawa would determine whether a contested land survey would transfer 300 acres of Fairfax timber rights to a neighbouring concern that had been pressing the claim for 2 years. 300 acres. Timber rights worth more than most families in the valley would see in a lifetime. And the man whose signature and physical presence were required to contest the claim had not been seen in public since the autumn of '72. The door opened. Mrs. Greer was a compact woman of about 60, with the expression of someone who had been managing the unmanageable for long enough that surprise no longer registered on her face. She looked at Miss Bassett. She looked at the travel bag. She stepped back from the threshold. "You'll want to come in before it snows," she said. "He won't see you tonight, but you can try again in the morning." Miss Bassett picked up her bag and went in. Lord Declan Fairfax had been, by all accounts, a capable man before grief made him otherwise. His neighbours remembered him from the years before, riding out to inspect the timber operations with the particular confidence of a man who understood land and what it required of its keeper, attending the starver suppers at St. Andrews in Lanark, bringing his son Theo on the rounds of the tenant farms with the patient deliberateness of a father, teaching a child what it meant to belong to a place. Theo had been 9 years old. The accident had been quick, in the way that the worst accidents always are, too fast to prevent, too complete to recover from. A horse that shied at something in the lane, a narrow bridge over the creek that ran east of the property. 2 years after that, Lady Fairfax had gone south to her sisters in Montreal, and had not returned. Not in the way that meant she had died, but in the way that meant the marriage, like the estate, was being managed from a distance by people who could not bear to be inside it. Lord Fairfax had remained. This was the thing Mrs. Greer always said, when anyone asked, and people did ask, in the careful sideways manner of those who want to understand something without appearing to pry. He had remained. In the house where the accident had begun. In the house where Theo's bedroom was still arranged exactly as it had been on the last morning, because no one had been permitted to touch it, and Lord Fairfax himself had not entered it in 3 months. Miss Bassett learned all of this before breakfast. Not because Mrs. Greer was indiscreet. She was, in fact, among the most discreet people Miss Bassett had ever encountered. But she was also practical, in the specific way of a woman who has been managing a difficult situation alone for too long, and has decided that the new arrival represents either a genuine possibility or a waste of everyone's time. And she intended to determine which as quickly as possible. "He'll hear you through the door," Mrs. Greer said, setting the tea things down. "He hears everything. He simply does not respond to most of it." "Has he eaten?" Miss Bassett said. "A tray last night." "And before that?" "The night before." Miss Bassett looked at the tea she had not yet touched, and then looked at the corridor. "Is the east wing far?" 10 minutes, Mrs. Greer said, "if you don't hurry." The study door was heavy oak and entirely silent. Miss Bassett stood before it in the cold corridor. The east wing was underheated, most of its fireplaces unlit, and considered her options. She could knock, she could speak, she could slide the documents Mr. Fletcher had given her under the door and hope that the act of reading them would produce a response. She had brought all 3 sets in triplicate, because Mr. Fletcher had told her Lord Fairfax had torn the first set delivered to him in October, and she preferred to have spares. She knocked. "Nothing." She said, "Lord Fairfax, my name is Miss Bassett. I've come from Mr. Fletcher's office in Ottawa regarding the Colvin survey hearing on the 15th. I have the documents that require your attention. I'll leave them here, and I'll come back in an hour." She slid 1 set under the door. She went back down the corridor. She did not go back in an hour. She went back in 40 minutes, because she was cold and there was work to do, and waiting had never been her particular strength. "The Colvin claim is fraudulent," she said to the closed door. "I've read the original survey from 48, and the eastern boundary was marked at the creek, not at the fence line they're now asserting. If you appear at the hearing and present the original document, the claim fails. If you don't appear, it doesn't matter what the document says." A silence, then from behind the door a voice. She had not expected a voice. "Why are you still here?" it said. Low, rough-edged, the voice of a man who had not used it much recently. "I told you," she said, "I have 3 sets of documents and 11 days. The others left." "I know. You should go with them." Miss Bassett looked at the door. She thought about the drive from Kingston in the cold, about the money Mr. Fletcher had promised her when this was done, about her father's accounts on his desk, and the invoice from the apothecary that had been sitting unpaid since August. "I'll go," she said, "when the quarterly accounts are finished. Mrs. Greer says they haven't been properly done since spring." A pause, then nothing, but he did not tell her to leave again. She came back that afternoon, with the household ledgers and a straight-back chair she had borrowed from the sitting room. She set the chair in the corridor outside the study door, lit the lamp she had also borrowed, and opened the first ledger. She did not knock. She did not announce herself. She simply began reading the figures aloud, not explaining them, not editorializing, not performing helpfulness. Simply reading. The coal delivery in September, underpaid by 12 shillings. The repairs to the south fence, logged twice. The discrepancy in the grain store tallies that suggested someone had been pocketing the difference since February. From behind the door, stillness. But a particular kind of stillness. Not the stillness of absence. The stillness of someone listening. She read for 2 hours. When she stopped, it was because the lamp was beginning to gutter. "The grain store discrepancy," said the voice behind the door. "That was Stanton." She paused. "Has he been let go?" "He left in the spring." A pause. "You'll find it evens out if you check the April entries." She checked, it did. She made a note. "Thank you," she said. No answer. but she had the distinct sense that Lord Fairfax had moved closer to the door than he had been before. Now, dear friends, I need to pause for just a moment. If you are new to Moonlight at Bellwood, this is the place for stories that take their time and earn their endings. Stories about the quiet kind of courage, about what happens between people when they stop pretending to be fine. If that is the kind of story you came here for, subscribe. There are more waiting for you here, by this fire, on evenings just like this one. And if you have been here before, thank you. You know how to settle in for the ones that matter. Now, back to Miss Bassett in a cold corridor with 11 days remaining and a closed door between her and everything. The days took on a shape. She arrived at the study corridor each morning at 9 with the ledgers or the correspondence or the legal documents, set up her chair and her lamp and worked. She spoke when she had a question. Sometimes Lord Fairfax answered, often he did not, but the voice, when it came, was a little less rough each day, as though it was being gradually reclaimed from disuse. He was precise. When he answered her questions about the estate accounts, his answers were exact. Figures recalled without hesitation, names of suppliers and tenants, the terms of agreements going back decades. The particular knowledge of a man who had once managed all of it himself. He had not lost his grip on the substance of things. He had simply stopped choosing to use it. On the 4th day, she made the mistake. She had been reading aloud from the correspondence file, and she came to a letter that had been misfiled. A child's drawing, tucked into a folder, marked 1873 correspondence. A pencil sketch of a horse, labored over with the concentration that 9-year-old boys bring to the things they care about, with VO written in careful capitals at the bottom, and below that, smaller, as though it were a title, Jupiter. She had looked at it before she understood what it was. Miss Bassett, said Lord Fairfax from behind the door. She had not said anything, she had not moved, but somehow he had known. Put it back, he said. His voice was different, flat in a way that was not calm. I'm sorry, she said, I didn't. Put it back and leave it. She placed the drawing carefully back in the folder and set it at the end of the correspondence pile where it would not be moved. I'm sorry, she said again. I didn't know it was there. The silence that followed was very long. She was gathering the ledgers to go when he spoke again. Jupiter was his horse, Lord Fairfax said. Theo named him. He spent 3 weeks deciding. She stopped. He couldn't ride him yet. He was too young, but he visited him every morning. A pause. He had a list of carrots he wasn't supposed to take from the kitchen. Mrs. Greer pretended not to notice. Miss Bassett did not say she was sorry again. She understood, without quite knowing why, that she was not to be sorry, she was to listen. He drew everything, Lord Fairfax said, horses mostly, but also the creek, the timber stacks. He drew his bedroom window from outside once, climbed up on the woodpile to get the angle right and gave Mrs. Greer considerable alarm. A pause. He was going to be good at it, better than I ever was at anything that mattered so little and meant so much. She sat back down in her chair. She did not open the ledger. What did he love most about this place? She said. It was not a calculated question. She would think about that later, in the small room where she slept, and understand that it had come out of a simple desire to know, not a strategy to reach him. She had been listening to her father describe his son, and she had wanted, quite naturally, to hear more. The silence on the other side of the door was the longest yet. Then he said, "The creek in spring, when it runs fast after the melt." He used to say it sounded like the whole valley waking up at once. She said, "Have you heard it this year?" Lord Fairfax did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice had shifted, not flat, not rough, something quieter than either. "No," he said, "I have not gone out this year." "I know," she said. "Or last year." "I know that too." A pause, then, "Can you hear it from here in spring?" "I don't know," she said. "I've only been here 4 days and it's November." Something happened then on the other side of the door. She could not have named it precisely, not a sound, more like the quality of the silence changing. The way a room changes when a window is cracked and the air shifts. "Miss Bassett," he said. "Yes." "The document, the survey one." "I have it here." "Read me the Eastern Boundary Clause again." She found the page. She read it. He listened, and when she finished, he said, "The fence line they're asserting was built in 51, 3 years after the original survey. My father built it. There's a letter somewhere in the files, 63 or 64, from the county office confirming it was a secondary demarcation, not a boundary revision." She was already writing, "I'll find it. It'll be in the grey box files, east corner of the archive room, second shelf." "I'll find it tonight," she said. "Good," he said, and then Miss Bassett. "Yes. You should eat something. Mrs. Greer's keeping supper." She paused. "So should you," she said. The longest silence yet, and then so quietly she was not certain she had not imagined it. "Yes, I suppose I should." She found the letter. It took her until nearly midnight, because the archive room was in considerable disorder, but she found it, and when she brought back to the corridor the next morning, she slid it under the door before she said a word. There was a sound from inside, paper moving, then quiet, then, "That's it." "I know," she said. "This wins the case. With your presence at the hearing, yes." She paused. "The 15th is 6 days away. It's 4 hours to Ottawa by train from Lanark." A silence, not the flat silence of refusal, something more complicated. "I have not been in public," he said, "since the autumn of 72. "I know." "People will." He stopped. "Yes," she said, "they will." Another silence. "You don't know what they'll say." "No," she said, "but you do, and you're still the one who has to decide." She paused. "Lord Fairfax, what did you decide this house was for after Theo died?" The question surprised him. She could hear it in the quality of the pause that followed. "What do you mean?" "I mean..." She looked at the corridor, at the closed doors on either side, the sheeted furniture visible through the ones that stood open. This house was built for something. Before, it was for the estate, the family, the land. After, what did you decide it was for? He said nothing. "Because I've been here 6 days," she said, "and from where I'm sitting, it seems like you decided it was for containing the grief. Which is..." She stopped. "That's not a criticism, it's a question." "A rather pointed one," he said. "I was told I was hired for organizational competence," she said. "I didn't know that meant only the accounts." A long pause, and then very quietly, "No, I suppose I didn't decide anything, I simply stopped." She thought of her father, of the way he had moved through his practice after her mother died, the specific automatism of a man continuing, because continuation was what was left. She thought of herself, learning the accounts because someone had to, taking the position at Fairfax Hall because someone had to, standing in this corridor for 6 days because someone had to. She had been telling herself it was practical necessity. She was no longer entirely certain that was the whole truth of it. "I know what that's like," she said. She had not intended to say it. "Do you?" he said. It was not quite a question. "My mother. 4 years ago." She paused. "I kept my father's practice accounts because he couldn't look at numbers for a year. And then I kept them because it turned out I was good at it. And then I kept them because..." She stopped. "Because it was the thing I could do, when there wasn't anything else." The silence stretched. She was aware dimly that she had just told a man she barely knew something she had not said aloud to anyone. "Miss Bassett," Lord Fairfax said. "Yes." "The door is not locked." She looked at it. "It has not been locked," he said, "in 11 weeks. I simply didn't open it." She stood. She put her hand on the door handle. "Would you like me to?" she said. The longest pause of all. "Yes," he said. She opened the door. The room was dark in the way she had expected. Curtains drawn, fire burned low. Lord Declan Fairfax stood at the far end near the window, his back to her. He was taller than she had imagined from his voice, and younger-looking than she had been led to expect, though the set of his shoulders carried an exhaustion that had nothing to do with age. He did not turn around. She did not require him to. She crossed to the fireplace, found the coal, and built the fire up properly. She lit the second lamp from the one she was carrying. She found the chair near the desk and sat in it with the legal documents already arranged in the order they would need to be signed. She said, the Eastern Boundary Clause first, then the Survey Challenge Form, then the attendance confirmation for the hearing. In that order. He turned then. His face was, she could not have described it cleanly. It was the face of a man who had been alone in a room for too long. Not ruined, not broken in any simple way, but worn in the specific way of someone who has been carrying weight in the dark without being able to put it down. He looked at her, she looked at him, she held out the pen. He crossed the room and took it. He signed, all 3 documents in order, precisely as she had said. When he set the pen down, she said, I'll send these to Mr. Fletcher today. He'll have them before Friday. Good, he said. A silence that was different from the corridor silences. Inhabited differently. 2 people in the same room, the fire beginning to warm the air between them. Miss Bassett, he said. Yes. The hearing, you said 4 hours to Ottawa. By the morning train from Lanark, yes. Would you? He stopped. He looked at the documents, at the fire, at some middle distance that was not quite either. Would you attend, with me? She considered this. I'm not a solicitor. No, but you know the documents better than I do at this point, and Mr. Fletcher has a tendency to become flustered when opposing counsel raises his voice. A pause. I would rather have someone present who does not become flustered. She thought she might have wanted to smile at that. She did not. She said, Yes, I'll attend. He nodded. He looked at the window, at the drawn curtains. What's the weather? Snow last night, clear this morning. He was quiet for a moment. Is the south path passable? She thought of what he had told her 4 days ago. The creek in spring, the valley waking up. I don't know, she said. It's November, but I expect so. He stood looking at the curtains for a long moment. Then he crossed to the window and drew them back. The light came in hard and white. Winter light. The particular clarity of an Ottawa Valley morning after snow, the kind that makes everything look as though it was just this moment made. He stood in it and did not look away, even though she could see, from where she sat, that the brightness cost him something. Tell me what it looks like, he said. She looked past him at the window, at the snow on the drive, at the pines at the far edge of the property standing dark against the white. At the sky above them, the color of pewter going pale at the horizon. The snow makes everything quiet, she said. Not the absence of sound, more like everything is being held for a moment, waiting to decide what comes next. He was still. The pines are holding it on their branches, she said, just barely. Another wind and it'll all come down. He said very quietly, and the sky. Getting lighter at the edges, she said. It does that here in the morning. The light starts at the horizon and works its way in, like it's making up its mind. He turned from the window. He looked at her with the particular expression of someone who has just been given something they did not know they needed, and are not yet certain what to do with it. The morning train from Lanark, he said. Leaves at 6:30, she said. I'll be ready. She stood. She gathered the documents. She moved toward the door, and at the threshold she stopped. Not because she had forgotten anything, but because she was aware, with a clarity that surprised her, of what she was standing inside. The cold corridor behind her, the room behind him, slowly warming, the window full of November light. She said, Lord Fairfax. Yes. The quarterly accounts, when the hearing is done. She paused. There's still the south fence repairs to reconcile properly. The February grain entries. It'll take another week at least. He looked at her. Something moved in his face, not quite a smile. Closer to the recognition that a smile might, at some point in the future, be possible. Then I suppose, he said, you'll need to stay. She nodded. She went. Lord Fairfax attended the hearing on the 15th. He dressed properly. He arrived punctually. He stood before the judge and answered the questions put to him with the precision of a man who had been recalling his own land's history for 11 weeks in the dark and knew it better than he had realized. Mr. Fletcher did not become flustered. Possibly because Miss Bassett sat directly behind him and had arranged the documents in the exact order they would be needed, and he could feel that order radiating at him like a steadying influence from 6 inches away. The Colvin claim failed. 300 acres of Fairfax timber rights remained where they had always been. On the train back to Lanark, as the valley came into view from the window, the pines, the river, the particular blue of the late November sky over the Ottawa Valley, Lord Fairfax looked out and did not look away. Miss Bassett worked on the last of the ledger corrections and did not comment on the fact that he had not moved from the window since they left Ottawa. He said without turning, "You were right about the sky." She did not look up from the accounts. "I usually am," she said. This time he did not suppress it. He laughed, quietly, briefly, as though slightly surprised by the sound of it, but unmistakably. She looked up then. She allowed herself to note it. She looked back at the accounts. "Miss Bassett," he said. "Yes." "Stay until Christmas," he said. "There's more than a week's worth of work here, and you know it." She considered the accounts. She considered her father's unpaid apothecary bill still waiting in Kingston. She considered the quiet of the corridor outside the study, and the particular quality of light that came through the windows of Fairfax Hall at first snow, and the creek that ran east of the property, which she had not yet seen, but which she was beginning to think she would like to. "Until Christmas," she said. She stayed until spring, but that is a story for another evening. And that, dear friends, is why I keep returning to this particular story. Not because it ends with a courtroom victory or a signed document or even the sound of a man laughing for the first time in too long, though all of those things matter. I come back to it because of what Miss Bassett did in that corridor for 6 days, without anyone asking her to be remarkable about it. She did not rescue him. She was very careful never to behave as though that was what she was doing. She showed up with ledgers and a lamp and a straight-backed chair, and she did the work that was in front of her, and she let the doing of it be sufficient. She did not ask for his grief. She did not explain it back to him. She sat outside his door and read him his own estate accounts, and when he finally opened that door, not because she forced it, but because she had made it safe to, she walked in, built the fire, and handed him a pen. That is all she did, and it was everything. There is a kind of presence that does not announce itself, that does not require you to be ready or well or grateful, that simply arrives, sets down its bag, and says, "I have 3 sets of documents and 11 days," and means it. The kind of presence that sits in a cold corridor, not with hope exactly, but with the quiet determination of someone who has decided that showing up is the whole of the job, and the job is worth doing. I have known that kind of presence in my own life, once or twice, and I think, dear friends, that you have too. Perhaps you have been that presence for someone else without knowing the size of what you were doing. Perhaps someone showed up for you in a dark hallway, in a hard season, and held the lamp long enough for you to remember what you were capable of. If they did, I hope you've told them. If you haven't yet, there is still time. Subscribe to Moonlight at Bellwood, and come back for the next story. Told here by the fire, where every love is honestly come by, and every ending is the kind that makes the beginning make sense. Moonlight at Bellwood, where the light starts at the edges and works its way in.